All right, welcome back for another quick peek into the masterclasses that I'll be running this year and next year for the AJC Coaching Career School Round 2, the second cohort that we've got coming up. And I'm really, really honored, pleased, happy that Melissa Ford has agreed to come back once again as faculty. I think yours was one of the highest positive feedback we got of all. I mean, we got great feedback on all of the masterclasses, but I think yours was right up there in terms of the feedback we got on the masterclass last time. So I'm so glad that you've agreed to come back.
Thanks, Ankush. I'm happy to be here. And I loved the coaches that you had and the questions they asked, and honestly, how open and coachable they were. And I know they're going to continue to be, because I know some of those coaches are coming back.
Yeah, we've had almost half. So 10 out of 21 have re-signed up for the school this time round as we speak right now. And so yeah, it's going to be a really nice group where we've got a real good group who a lot of them have done it before and now they're different. So they're showing up differently because they're not the same coaches they were last time round. And then we've got some really, really amazing coaches who are signed up for this cohort. And I'm excited because I'm different too. And I'm sure you are. So, even though there's lots of similar elements of the last school, we're all different and we're bringing different things to it. And I'm really, really glad that you in particular, and I said this last time, but it's worth reiterating that you agreed to come back to the school, because when I was learning, there were always examples of people who'd done it. Here's the person who's the exception. Here's the person who grew their coaching practice 90 days of quitting their corporate job and created a six-figure income, right? And it was the outliers, complete, like real far outliers. And I struggled to learn from them because I'd listen to them. Okay, what do they do? Okay, that. And it didn't work for me. And I remember when I first came across you, which was in Steve Chandler's coaching school in, I think, 2015, January, February or something was when we first met. And you were doing well, you were doing far better than I was at the time. And I was, one, in awe of you. And two, there was a humbleness. And as I got to know you, I realized, and I've seen that the whole way through, as I got to know you more and more, there was no, pretending to be an expert or I know better. You always shared really gracefully and honestly from your heart and said, hey, this is what worked for me. This might work for you. And anyone who's read your book will get a glimpse of who you are. You live service. You're a real great role model for anyone who stays on the path can make it, because even though you're wildly successful now, it took you a long time to get there. And as Steve Chandler has said, the thing that is the hardest for you to learn is the thing you're best at teaching. And so I think you're a wonderful teacher because it didn't come so quickly and easily for you in the early days. So I really want to acknowledge you for that.
Thank you. Yeah, it did take time. And I had to learn all the mistakes before it really gelled for me. And making those mistakes actually was what grew me and grew my business. So the things that I had wanted to avoid, the things that were like, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen. When those things happened, they actually made me a better coach. They had me become a stronger business owner. They were the very things that became the foundation from which I run my coaching business today.
Well, it's funny that you use those words. You said they made me a better coach, they made me a better business owner. Use the words business owner, because I thought we could talk about that today. And I know it's a lesson, you went through and I went through to learn about coaching as also a business. Because when I started out, it was like, well, this isn't a business, this is coaching. Or if I thought of it as a business, I was like, well, it's a different kind of business. And it is. There are elements to it being kind of quite different to a lot of other businesses. And in other ways, it's not. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your journey of not seeing it as a business to seeing coaching as a business. And then how does that tie in with everything else you talk about, which is kind of coming from your heart, being service-led? How do those two things coexist?
Yeah, I did not see my coaching as a business. I didn't even have the lens of seeing it as a practice. So whatever word you use, business, practice, for me, it was really for a long time a matter of survival. It wasn't about, oh, I'm a coach and I'm a business owner. And it was one time where I was sitting down with Steve and it was a full day. And I was talking about what was going on for my coaching and the people that I was coaching. And he said to me, oh, so it sounds like you have a business. I remember thinking, what? A business? It never dawned on me to see what had been created as separate and apart from me. And I remember thinking, well, how do you run a business? And what was so funny is for years, my husband had been running his own business and I had been handling the financial end of things and I had been doing the admin things. I still do some of that. And I thought, oh my gosh, I totally don't see that I do know how to do this. I am a business person. I know how to do these things. So I started looking at what had been created, this coaching, and I started seeing it as separate and apart from me. And I was taught the more impersonal this business becomes, the healthier it will be, the more fun you're going to have with it, the freer you're going to be when you have conversations with people. It's going to make the difference. And impersonal at first sounded kind of cold and heartless, the very opposite of service. But it actually is of great service to see what's been created, the things that you offer, your programs, your coaching, your own development as a business. And so now when I get into this realm of serving, how business fits into it is I not only want to look at what serves a prospective client or client, but what serves me and what serves my business. So that's kind of an overview of beginning to really get this business is not me. And from there, things really started to shift for me.
Can we talk more about that? Because I know in the school we talk about coaching is a relationship business and it can feel very personal for coaches. I know when I speak to coaches who are in the school or are thinking about the school, it's very clear to me that they really care about people. They really care about the people they want to, in general, they care about the people who want to sign up. It's not just like, oh, I want to sign someone up and make money out of them. And so how do we resolve those two things? That on one hand, this really is a relationship business and it's all about, you've got to feel really close with someone. I feel you've got to feel really comfortable with someone if you're going to get coached by them. There's a really important lesson around rapport. And on the other hand, you're absolutely right. It seems like this kind of dichotomy of, well, on the other hand, it isn't about you. This isn't like if someone hires you, then you're good. And if they don't hire you, which is something, well, I used to feel like, oh, there's something wrong with me. How do we balance those two things?
I think it's through making mistakes. I think it's through, really caring for somebody and really feeling like you've got this real connection. And then say, for instance, they don't show up for a coaching call and then thinking it means something about you. And then going through the hurt or the anger or whatever it is that you might be experiencing, and then be able to step back and go, wait a second. When I take this relationship personally, I can love and care deeply for somebody, and I don't have to take what goes on personally. So if I'm processing it through making some meaning about me or about them, it's all going to go down the tubes. So in that instance, what I can do is I can start to develop a policy for my business. This is one of the things that I would do over and over. So something like that would happen. And then I would have this policy that if somebody, for instance, canceled an appointment or didn't show up for something, if I started ruminating about what it meant about me or them, my policy was that I was going to stop and I was going to pay attention to the fact that either our agreements were not clear or they didn't see that they were canceling on themselves. I did everything that I could to start to look through the lens of it wasn't about me and it wasn't about them. So that's an example.
That's so beautiful, because what I just had this thought, this idea as you were talking was, wow, this doesn't just apply to coaching. And even though we're not running businesses elsewhere in our lives, I'm like, oh yeah, that's true. In a marriage, if I take things really personally, then I'm not being the most loving I can be to my partner.
No.
As a parent, if I take really personally what my kids say or do, then I can't really be the greatest parent to them. So yeah, this isn't so unusual perhaps, that this is maybe about being as loving as we can be. And by being as loving as we can be, it's not personalizing whatever the other person does or doesn't do, or what they say or don't say.
Yeah, exactly. And, we all get into that place where it does come in and it is personal. You kind of feel it like a hit. But what's really occurring is that I'm viewing what's going on through my own lens of lack or deficiency or something about me. It's getting distorted through some sort of lens. And I don't want that there. I want to be able to just clearly see what's going on, be loving of myself, be loving of the other individual, and then really look at, okay, so what's going to make this as simple as possible and how do I move this? Now I'm clear-headed. Now I'm able to come up with creative ideas and I'm not caught up in over and over, making up stories about myself or somebody else that simply are not true. So that's how you begin to run a business like a business, is you have those mistakes, you have those experiences that feel really personal. And now there's an opportunity to slow down and take each situation and really see what's going on. And then that way, business becomes a game. And I was somebody who did not like games. I don't want to play games. I don't like competition, but it really does become a game. It becomes something that you get to play with, something that you get to enjoy, something that you can learn from. So I'm always looking for ways to upgrade my own business, how I run it. And like you said earlier in the introduction, it's like, as I grow, as I change, then my business will shift. It's going to be a reflection of where I'm at, the degree to which I love, the degree to which I'm able to remove the ego, the degree to which I'm able to depersonalize. And that's it. That's part of being successful as a coach.
Could you talk a little bit more about some of the other policies you might have in your business, which have it be a business? Because I think that could be really helpful for people to hear some more of the detail around that.
Yeah. So one of the other policies I have, and it really kind of wraps in with service, is that I want to be conscious of being in the lead with prospective clients and clients. So if I start to have some sort of issue with them, let's say, again, like canceling or whatever, I have a policy that if that's happening, I want to get in the lead and not be a victim of whatever's been going on. So I want to serve them by opening up the discussion around an agreement, or opening up the discussion around payment, or opening up the discussion. I want to be able to go to the places that I might feel are uncomfortable for myself and the other individual. So one of the policies I have is, am I in leadership or have I fallen out of leadership? And I want to make sure that I want to be in the lead. And it's a give and take in a coaching relationship, but I want to be able to keep it as simple as possible for people and be as clear as possible. So that's one of my policies. Another policy that I have, let's trying to think, because they've just become so integrated to actually separate them out. One of the policies I have is that if a coaching session hasn't gone the way that I want, I'll ask for a redo. So I wrote about that in my book. So if I leave a session and I feel like something could have been done differently, or I hadn't shown up the way that I wanted to show up, I can always go back and I can say, let's have a redo. I frequently don't do that anymore. It doesn't seem to come up because I'm very present and ready to have a coaching session with somebody, but it's always available to me. I can always go back and say, hey, let's do this thing over. And that actually, talk about coaching being a relationship, actually deepens the relationship with either a prospective client or a client. So those are a couple. I'm kind of right now, Kush, I'm kind of like, what other policy? But that's what I do. I take the things that I perceive to be the mistake, and then I use them to my benefit and to my business's benefit.
Brilliant. One other thing that comes up, and I know we don't have loads of time to, otherwise we could talk about this for ages, but I remember you and I having a conversation a few years ago, which is kind of slightly separate to policies, but it's a way of you running your business as a business. And we spoke about cash flow, and we spoke about having a certain amount of money in your business. Do you remember that? Keeping a certain amount of money in your business and not kind of running yourself to the bone. Right. And I remember us talking about it going, wow, no one talks about this. And it was something that we both discovered through running the business. And it takes away the neediness, but it's also treating it like a business. Like most businesses wouldn't be running on no money in the business. They would have some kind of buffer. Could you talk about that?
Yeah. And, that was something that I just innately did. So I never really saw it as this is what businesses should do. But that's exactly right. There's a certain amount of money set aside that I can continue to pay my bills. I can continue to live if money isn't flowing, because I've been in this business for a while and every year is a different year. So there are some months where there's lots of money that flows in, and then the next month it might be a quarter of that. It just depends. So I want to know that I've got a reserve that I can tap into so I can be the kind of business person I want to be, which is to pay my bills and to continue to make an investment in myself as a coach. So that was something that I just naturally did. I know that there are other coaches where I think it was the book called Profit First. It's out there, and it talks about how you can actually create these various accounts, because you also have to make sure you have money set aside for your taxes. And I learned that lesson years ago when I was an attorney and I was not salaried and I made this money and I was like, this is great. And then tax time came and I went, what? I didn't know I had to have money set aside for taxes. So that mistake was something where, well, I'm never going to do that again. Another policy, this just came to mind for me, is that when prospective client says yes, and I say yes to working with them, the invoice goes out immediately. I don't wait. And I don't wait because I don't need to create another thing for me to do. I don't need to have that on my mind. It's that old idea of the minute something is said that I'm going to do, I do it as quickly as I can. So that's another policy I have. You say yes, I say yes, we're going. I'm going to get you dates. I'm going to send you the invoice. I'm going to make sure that we're clear about when payment's going to be made. And now I'm going to continue to serve you. You're my client, we're going.
I think that's such an important point, and I think it's something that a lot of coaches could tie up on. Yeah. And you mentioned a few things there. There was, well, I send the invoice out, but then there were other things. There were like the invoice. You also said, then I get the date in the calendar for the first session. There were a couple of other things that you said as well, and I think they were all really great for coaches to take on board if they're not doing this already.
Yeah. It's the invoice goes out, the dates get in the calendar. I start in my mind now, we're working together. We get clear about when that's going to get paid. And that's another thing that I do. A policy that I have is when we're talking about fee and we're talking about now we're going to do this together, I am going to slow myself down and the other person, so it's absolutely clear what are the next steps to be able to now enter into a paid coaching relationship. So I will say, I'm going to send you the invoice. When you receive it, will you pay it? Yes. Okay. So there's two ways you can pay it. And I just slowed that down. That used to be super uncomfortable for me because it's like, oh gosh, this is awkward. What if they think that I'm greedy? I mean, I hope I don't trip over the amount of money. And so it was just doing it over and over and realizing that really thoughtful, conscious, slowed down conversation around money was massive service. Massive service to that client, massive service to me and my business. Yep. It's just like it gets everybody to relax and everybody's clear about what's going on.
Absolutely. And we'll talk about more about this in the masterclass maybe, but what I started to see is when you look at other businesses that do well, these are things that they all do well. And, one of the things that I like about Amazon and the reason why they do well is they make it really easy to pay them, and when you go to other websites now, you're like, oh, why isn't it so easy? And they've spent so much time and effort and energy making it easy to pay, making it easy to return. That whole kind of checkout process is really world class. And I've actually had it myself when I signed up to a program a few years ago and it was with a coach and I didn't get an invoice for about 3 or 4 days and I started getting nervous. I'm like, hey, I've booked some time out to go on this course. I've not got an invoice. Am I enrolled? Am I still on this course? And I got to see it from the other side. So
yeah, I just hired a coach for 6 sessions for a particular type of work. And it was interesting because I was literally running. I was watching myself do this. I was running so how are we going to work? And how many sessions is that? I mean, I was running the conversation around the money. So you'll send me the invoice. Great. When I get it, I will pay it. Will you send me your Calendly link? I mean, it's become second nature here. Today, I paid it. I mean, the first it comes in, I'm paying it. And even as a client, I'm in. I'm not going to mess around. I'm committed. Let's go. So now what I have to do when we're done talking here is get on her calendar. Yeah.
Beautiful. We could keep talking for ages, but I wanted to keep these around 20 minutes. So thank you so much. That flew by. I'm excited to have your masterclass for the school again. It's going to be around January. At the time of recording, we only have a few spots left. I don't know by the time it goes out where they'll be left, but we have a few slots at the moment and I'm sure the right people will take them. So thank you so much for today, Melissa.
Yeah, you're welcome. Kush, can I do one last comment?
Of course you can.
Right. So anybody who's watching this, one thing that I want you to know, my experience is growing as a coach. There were 2 things that moved the needle. One was one-on-one coaching and the other was having colleagues and learning together. And I can tell you that with Ankush and how he structures this and the people that he invites in, you are going to get so much from being with other coaches and learning from them and hearing the questions they ask and really using the group to grow together. So I just want to say anybody who's even slightly interested to make sure they reach out to Ankush.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm really glad that you're part of it again. Thank you.
Me too.